Thank you for taking time out to join us this afternoon. I have to say this is the third in our series of panel discussions focused on hospitality and tourism. The first one looked at life in a quarantine hotel, and then we interviewed 3 top Joburg restaurants and looked at the challenges presented by lockdown for their businesses. Today, I have a particular pleasure in hosting this panel, because at one time or another, I have walked with just about everybody on the panel and have seen the city through their eyes. And they are the people who keep that interest in the city alive. And all of us have hitched our fortunes to the city, for better or for worse. It's kind of a marriage to someone you're not really sure how this thing is going to turn out. But it is a kind of love affair that continues with a place that sometimes is quite difficult to love, should we put it that way, and quite a unique city. Just to introduce what we do for those of us who don't know, I publish a city guide to Joburg. With me today is my co-pilot, Louise Whitworth, who's a writer and deputy editor, and she's going to be helping me with some of the tech stuff. And we publish a print and digital guide to probably what is one of the most difficult cities to market, because there's so much negative perception about Johannesburg, and we constantly come up against that. But we're part of an international guide series that actually started in Eastern Europe more than 20 years ago. And the fact that they started in Eastern Europe in so-called dodgy cities means that it's the perfect brand for us, because we're, all the publishers in the In Your Pocket stable are used to dealing with dodgy cities. And just to give you a bit of background, 6 years ago when we started the guide, we started to just connect with people very widely across the city. And it's really given us a real privileged perspective on what happens in Joburg, what makes Joburg, what keeps the city alive as a tourism space. And it's this that we're hoping to share with everybody who attends. Another thing is just that we've always believed it's really important to spread information and to share knowledge, and that information should really empower people to make decisions. And that's always behind the philosophy of what we do. And our weekly sessions are very much about sharing the kind of information we think it's important for people to have. So we started this session with the idea was a very cheeky question of basically, can you be a tour guide if there are no tourists? And what it means to be a tour guide in a city like this, and how you guide through a lockdown city. So I'm not going to say much more. I want to introduce you to our panelists, who all represent independent businesses in Joburg. So we have Gerald, Garner, and Charlie Moyo from JoburgPlaces. Gerald and Charlie, if you want to give a little wave, you can do that. We have Joe Buitendach from Past Experiences, and Kennedy Tembo from MicroAdventure Tours. And each specializes in creating a very unique experience of Joburg. But I'll leave them to tell you more about that. And in the past few days, they've all started taking tours again. And so that was very interesting for us. We had a lot of questions about that. But we're going to kick off with Gerald Garner, and then with Charlie Moyo from JoburgPlaces. I think just first for people who don't know, if you can give a bit of background on the kind of tours you offer.
Thank you, Laurice. So yes, I'm Gerald, and I'm with Charlie. We operate JoburgPlaces, which is very much based on the inner city of Johannesburg and exploring the history of the city through storytelling. So our tours are historically intensive. They are not casual strolls. They're actually experiencing a little bit of an encyclopedia in a short time. But we actually focus on the incredibly rich history of the city, but also talking about the current day socio-economic context of the city and goes to in the future. So we often actually would coin ourselves as inner city regeneration activists who happen to also tour in the city.
Charlie, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, yes, I just would like Gerald say, just to add to that, is we also suckers for always finding out, hidden spots in Johannesburg, places where people don't think exist, and the treasures of the city as well. So yes, it adds to that basically regeneration of the city. We are always looking out for the hotspots of Joburg that are hard to find, the nitty-gritty and the chaos in the city. I hope that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. Joe, do you want to tell us a bit about past experiences?
Yeah, sure. Well, hi everybody, and it's so funny. I mean, if I see who's checked in, it's like the who's who of Joburg people. So hi everybody who I know. So I've been running past experiences for the last 11 years, and we focus on the Joburg inner city, as does everybody here. Also Soweto, and we do very in-depth tours. A lot of our focus is history, politics, and then especially graffiti and street art is what we are known for in Johannesburg. And I agree with Gerald. I think being a guide in Johannesburg, you aren't just a guide, you become like an activist because your heart ends up pumping the Johannesburg inner city.
Viva.
Kennedy? Tell us about your tours.
Yes, I'm Kennedy Welani Tembo. I'm a new kid on the block. Started 2017. I started MicroAdventures. It was based on my passions, and it was my side hustle I was doing while I was employed in the corporate in IT, doing SAP. And I just love the city because of its people, its history. It's just incredible. The history is incredible. But my starting was based on the adventure side of it, while exploring history and having a bit of adventure. So I started with the cycling tours, but the first tour though was the Northwards tour at the Northwards Mansion for Josie and John Dales. And then, then I picked up from there with the cycling tours and the coffee cycling tour. And then now I've got the coffee walking tour. And then the best selling, which was the best selling, was the Johannesburg by night, Josie by night, the magic tour. And it was just fantastic. My other places where I was visiting was, JoburgPlaces, the Zwippy. So missing that part. So it's the cycling tours, the Joburg by night, and then the rooftops, Joburg rooftops. And of course, the driving around Joburg full day or half day. So that's me in a nutshell.
I think you were saying you're missing visiting JoburgPlaces and their venue in the city. Gerald, I want
Very
to
true.
ask you. Sorry, Ken. Gerald, I want to ask you. So we've been watching as this lockdown happened, and this, I can only, we've all been through this absolute anxiety about getting that kind of notice that everything was being shut down. But I must say, as we've watched JoburgPlaces try so many different things to stay in the game, to survive this with what you have, tell us a little bit about that story and what you've been going through over the past few months.
Wow, Laurice, I wouldn't know where to start or where to end, other than just say that, it's a game of survival. We realized very early on that there was going to be big drama. This was beginning of March when, some of our guests were actually some of the first people to test positive for COVID in South Africa. And we panicked hugely because our staff hosting these people for dinners and storytellings and so on were usually exposed. So we shut down mid-March, 2 weeks before the lockdown. And then had to come up with plans to survive. And we thought, okay, let's sell vouchers because, lockdown, once it comes, will be 2 or 3 weeks and everything will back, to normal. Of course, it didn't work like that. So we were lucky that by accident almost, we were out of the blocks quite quickly in our, emergency strategy and communication of how to survive. And we had very good support from people in Johannesburg around the world buying vouchers that they can spend with us later. But I mean, there's still been a drama. We have not been successful with UIF payments. We only got to UIF payments for 2 of our 12 staff members, actually. The rest is still in the process of waiting. But yeah, I mean, Charlie and I, luckily, because of our knowledge of the city, we managed to come up with other side hustles. So we became carpet merchants and selling a lot of beautiful things that you find in downtown Johannesburg to keep us alive in the meantime. And I mean, in terms of our venue, you take it a day at a time, because I mean, there's no ways you can pay rent for 3 or 4 months long without having daily food as well. But I'm glad to say that we feel at this moment that we are actually going to survive, and that we will be around by the time Joburg comes alive again.
Tell me another question I had. Actually, I'm just going to move on and then we're going to come back. I wanted to ask Joe how you've managed to also talk to your clients over this time. How much have you kept people up to date since the shutdown with what's going on?
I mean, obviously we're quite big on social media. So I've been doing most days or every couple of days, some sort of Instagram, Facebook, Twitter post. Trying to keep it interesting. So at the beginning, we had a lot of clients send pictures from around the world that they had taken on tours. So we did that. And then I went through my database of photos I've taken over the last 11 years, and we were sharing that, because obviously we couldn't get any new content because I wasn't walking around the city taking photos, which is what I normally do. So we've been doing that, but then also I've got a newsletter. So I've been doing that like once a week or once every 2 weeks, and trying to come up with content like the book of the week or the movie of the week. So it had to be about Joburg, obviously. So yeah, no, it's been like a bit of a challenge, but actually for the first time ever, I've had time to do that stuff, because normally I'm running around crazy because of tours. So it's not a good reason to have time to do that stuff, but at least I've been able to.
And Kennedy, you took a cycling tour on the coldest day of the year, basically. In the last few days. Was that your first tour that you've taken?
Yeah, that was my first tour, and I'm glad to say it was the returning client. They've actually been with me on my tours, three tours. But to tell you what I've actually been up to, getting engaged, being with my clients, was I started a COVID history series on a write-up on Joburg history. And I started 3 days before the lockdown. And I wrote every day for, I think, 60 days, 60 days, sharing the stories of Joburg. And those are the stories that you cannot cover on a tour, because, I mean, it's just too much for the people. So what I did was doing the pictures, the old of, the history of Joburg, the buildings, and just giving them the stories. And then when there was a 6 to 9, I think, on level 4, when they allowed us to exercise. So I said, yay, this is a good opportunity to get back on my bike. So I started riding in the city. And then I thought of going live in different spots, different places, going live on our Facebook page, on MicroAdventure Tours, and just telling people about the snippets of the history. For instance, like the Sylvia's Pass, for instance, Stewart Drive, or the Water Tower in Yevo, or, and Monroe Drive. Yeah, so that's what I've actually been doing. The last one was, I was crazy. Was it 2 days, 3 days ago? I just thought of riding to Alberton. So I started here from Parktown to Alberton, and I was like, oh, Alberton, what does it have? I remembered of the story of Johann Meyer. Just I started talking about that, and I came back with my teddy bear, and it was good fun. Keeps me
another
sane.
3 months and your teddy bear will be visiting Egypt. we better unlock you. Get you off the back. Tell me, Charlie, I wanted to ask you, what's it been like? Yes. What's the city like to take tourists to, or take visitors to right now? What's the experience of taking visitors?
Well, I mean, to be honest, it's not the same, you know. I mean, a lot has changed. I mean, even just that heartbeat of the city is not the same anymore. There is no vibrancy like, you know, before. But I did my third tour on Sunday, and during the week, I mean, it's really a cool city. So like almost a normal city, not the same, no, but almost a normal city. But I mean, with the fact that everything is almost closed and you can't visit places, you simply have to like start, you know, sending in, you know, you have to actually basically ask for permission rather before you come into a place, and you go to a coffee shop that you love so much and you have to wait outside and you can't sit down and chat to your guests. So that has changed a lot for me. But I mean, as a tour guide, you know, you have to adapt to change and you have to make it work. And so for me, it's been fantastic with all 3 tours, because definitely my guests loved, even though they've been on tour with me before, that made the tour different in itself. So yeah, you have to work with what you got, but a lot has changed indeed.
And a question for any of you, it's like, so how do you engineer are you re-engineering the tour experience because of this time? Like in terms of obviously safety, how do you deal with the safety issue of making people actually feel secure about being outside with you?
Well, what I do.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Kennedy. Go ahead.
All right. For me was I have put these guidelines in place. Okay, so we take the temperature. Is that the safety of the virus? I suppose that's what that's the question is based on, right?
Yes. Yes.
Laurice, yeah.
Yes.
So
I've had to almost reassure people as well. Wow, they.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So what I've done is I've bought the sanitizers, the nifty ones, they're easy to carry, right? And then when they come on the tour, I do the temperature. I have that temperature thingy, the thermometer. And once I take that, then they have to fill in the indemnity form. And but make sure at that time we have the masks, of course, and we keeping the distance. And for instance, like yesterday for my bike tour, I made sure that the bikes are all sanitized before the tour, and the helmets are all sanitized, and just reassuring the people that we are good, and then we get started together. And I gave them the sanitizer so that each and every time they mustn't actually forget to sanitize their hands. So that's one of the things that I've actually put in place.
And a question for Joe. You've had also had a number of tours over the last few days. Just also trying to understand, are those people who've all toured with you before, or are any of them new clients?
So far, everybody that I've taken, or everyone who's coming up, because I've got tours for the next few days as well, till Saturday, are all people who are either have been on tour or they have booked for their parents or someone like that. So they are all coming off, an existing database, which I think is something that all of us here, everyone that is discussing here, probably something that makes us different as guides, is we all do have a local support system, which a lot of guides are dealing with foreigners, or we're dealing with both. So we do have locals who are supporting us. I've also had a journalist come out, which has been nice. So we've taken her around, and she's going to write about kind of what we're talking about here, is like, how do you start a business again after 2 months? Normally, for the last 11 years, I've toured every day. For the first time, I've had, 2 months of no touring, which has been crazy. So yeah, no, it's been, it has been locals, which is, I think, the best, or expats who live here.
And has that been similar for you at JoburgPlaces as well? Similar mix of people? Be interested?
Yes, absolutely. Maybe I should just say, because if you ask if you can do tourism without tourists, of course you need tourists, but they can take different shapes and forms. So one thing we did do in the last month and a half as well is virtual storytellings, and not tours. It's like we're having a discussion now. We tell stories about Johannesburg. But remarkably for that, we managed to actually attract a lot of international people To our own surprise, and what was exciting is some of them have never been to Joburg, but our friends invited them to the storytelling, and now they want to visit the city. So it's great that we can at least keep some people interested in town, in the town. But to answer your question directly, yes, we have also, and I think Joe would agree with that. I mean, in Joburg, we're in a unique space that probably half our tourists in any event are so-called locals. We call them the suburbanite tourists, so a little bit curious about town, but also scared about town. Therefore, they make use of a guide, whereas in another city, they probably would have just gone and explored themselves. So we have had people like that who've been on tours before, out of our loyal following and database we booked in the last 2 weeks or week and a half. And yes, I think the other thing that is still the source of tourism, potential tourism, Johannesburg is what Joe also mentioned, the expat community, who have become much smaller. I mean, we've had phone.
I don't know if the sound, can everybody hear? Sorry, I'm hearing the sound is breaking a little. Sorry, Gerald, can you repeat that last sentence?
Yeah, so what I was saying is, I mean, Joburg also has an expat community, which is a great source of travel and tourism. I mean, that's not only Joburg, half of them probably live in Pretoria and work for consulates and embassies. However, we have seen a lot of expats leaving and expatriate flights recently, which is absolutely worrying. But it is lovely to know there is still an international community here, and while they're also in partial lockdown, they actually have more time to explore. So we've seen some of those people come on tour.
Do you see yourselves creating a different kind of tour because of what's happened? Do you see yourselves creating something that speaks to factors that have arisen through this lockdown? Like all that, do you see yourself shifting? Or do you think what you already show captures that?
In our case, I think our tours have been thought out over, a long time and work fairly well. And I mean, we've always tried to actually base our tours in public spaces so that we're not reliant on permission, to access places. So, it's a case of just choosing the ones that are easier to do under the circumstances. There's some tours that we think are challenging under the circumstances at the moment. And then I guess, the one thing we have done in our virtual storytelling, so I think Charlie will agree, it will become part of what we talk about anyway, is, I'm busy also writing Johannesburg 2020 and Ahead, which looks at the future of the city. So I think we're actually beginning to talk more about the future and less about the past. That's maybe the one thing that's changed.
It does seem a fact of this experience, though, that as we jump from level to level, you actually have to just embrace whatever the level. It's like love the one you're with. You can't even think about what happened yesterday because we so need to get to the point where we actually can get to the future that you can't kind of look back, it's a very strange kind of headspace to be in. I see some people are leaving questions in the chat. Can I ask you to move them to the Q&A? I see there are 2 questions here which we can deal with now. The first is from Maggie Maklala. She said, COVID-19 has upended our day-to-day lives and snatched away nearly all normality. How would tour guides advise us to host tours in the city during this lockdown, considering that we need to scale down participants as well, from hosting bigger groups down to smaller? So how would you advise people to host tours?
I think a lot of us in this, a lot of us do smaller tours anyway. I'm not saying we don't do bigger tours as well, but, I often bump into Charlie with 1 or 2 people, or, so for us to scale down hasn't been as difficult, but obviously numbers does mean your profit is higher often. So, at the moment I'm taking a maximum of 4 people only. And I think, Gerald, you and Charlie are doing something similar. I'm not sure about Kennedy, but we're doing
it's
maximum 4. And I'm running a special. I know Gerald and Charlie are as well. And Kennedy, again, I'm not sure about you, but it's like we're hustling. Johannesburg is the land of the hustle, and nothing's changed.
There's another question.
Oh,
carry on. Kennedy? Go
Okay, so I
ahead.
just wanted to add that, yeah. So it's the maximum of 4 people. That's what I've actually settled at, and less than maybe the minimum can be 1 or 2 or so, depending on a tour. But you take anyone you can actually take. If 1 or 2, you can up to 4, because I mean, at the end of the day, you have to be safe yourself, and to make sure that everybody around you is also safe. And I think targeting the groups that they know each other, not mixing up, right? Or maybe the family, the family bookings, they want to actually come as a family. That's okay. Yeah, maybe, yeah. It's hard to say, but you can have 4. Maybe you actually mix it up. It's also up to you. But actually, the numbers will make it much safer if you can kind of say you're 4. I think that would be much safe number to have.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on virtual tours and virtual experiences? I know.
I did my very first virtual tour at the Rand Club. Yes, I must say, hey, because I'm feeling touchy and feely, and you don't actually have that, the social aspects of it. It felt very, very strange for me, but as one said, you know what, Kennedy, you got to do what you have to do. So if that works, go for it. So yeah, so I'm looking to doing more of that, but my experience, I really didn't enjoy it because I wanted to actually to have that contact. I'm actually used to having that. And I guess everybody is actually used to that anyway.
Although I think it's quite an interesting space to play around, like for people who are coming to Joburg. And I like, because Gerald's saying, that international people were attracted to the online storytelling. It becomes quite an interesting space to almost have a stream of online content that is about people preparing for their trip, who would then want to do that real tour when they get here. I think there's that possibility. Yeah. But yes. Charlie and Gerald, you've been doing some online storytelling. Tell us how that's worked.
Well, I think for us, a plus is when we do these storytellings and we have international guests who haven't been here yet, they actually look forward to it, post-COVID-19, their first stop will be Joburg. So we are promoting the city as such during COVID-19. So for us, we're very proud of that we can actually showcase our city through storytelling, because that's what we are, Gerald and I. We are very good storytellers. And we can paint a very good, excuse me, if I can say so myself. So we can paint a very good picture of the city without walking you around. So yes, for me, that is very important, to promote the city while we still have the chance.
Laurice, just to add to what Charlie's saying there, I mean, I also answer the question that the lady asked earlier. I mean, it's so incredibly difficult because, I mean, it's impossible to do large enough tours for the average guide to actually survive. And it's impossible for any of us to generate enough income to actually do what we've done before. But, I think one of the most important things is to keep our names and our brands alive. By the time that we emerge out of this, doesn't matter how long it takes, we would like to still be considered as the first stop, a company or a person you go to for tours, and we would like to be considered worth visiting. So yes, I mean, doing a tour for 2 people is not usually profitable at all, but it keeps our name out there, and it reminds people that we are there. And that, I think, is the most important thing. Do whatever you can to just still be in business by the time we end all of this. Even if you didn't make any money out of it, at least people still consider you to be part of the industry.
Then I want to kind of switch a little bit just to talk about the city itself. What do you think, what more could be done, or what could be done rather than what more? Because I don't think a whole hell of a lot is often done to promote the city. I think so much of the city's good name comes from people like you on this panel who do that work every day rather than from any official voice. And if you could, see Joe's face, if you could take over the official voices for a day and be the official tourism authority, what would you be promoting about? How would you sell Joburg? I think let's give each of you a turn. Let's kick off with Jo, because she had the most interesting expression.
Yeah. I think everyone here knows my opinions on this, but I mean, the panelists, because obviously I know you, but yeah, I think I have to say I feel very alone often in terms of marketing the city, in the sense that I don't feel a huge amount of support from the provincial sort of tourism authorities. So a lot of our support comes from Joburg In Your Pocket, or other, you know, people like Gerald and Charlie, like Kennedy. So we're the independent people sort of promoting the city. I saw Bradley was on here, like Love Josie. So for me, South African tourism is actually very helpful, but the provincial, and, you know, I would say anything, I would take anything, any support in the city center, because it's got such a bad reputation, but it, you know, there's a lot of greatness to the city. So if I would just say any help would be great at all.
And if you could suggest one thing that should happen?
That's a huge question, because over the years, I mean, I've thought so many different things, but I mean, I think small business could definitely do with some help, and a lot of the inner city areas like Maboneng could also do with some help. So anything, we will take anything at this point. I'm begging,
Okay.
Someone will help us.
Okay, Charlie, you are Minister of Tourism for the next 3 minutes. What would you do about Joburg? How would you promote?
I mean, for starters, I think the best way to promote this city is to accept its diversity, you know, and put it out there in the market. I think if you can approach Joburg as a city of what it is, that is the city of migrants. Not a lot of people can claim they were born here, and take that and sell it to the world, and make Joburg the one-stop shop for the entire continent. And say you don't have to visit the entire continent, because we have all of that here. If you really want to visit the continent and you don't have time, why don't you stop at Joburg and visit all the places, and we'll show you exactly where. And they really have to actually integrate these migrant communities. And once they do that, they will make a lot more money in terms of tax and so forth. And that money can be used to elevate the tourism industry. So I think if we look into that and we promote it and advertise it and we integrate it the right way, Joburg as a tourist destination will explode.
Okay, you've got my vote. You've got my vote. Let's see. Let's get Kennedy on the topic. You are now Minister of Tourism.
Okay, great. Joburg, just by its nature, is so cosmopolitan, right? And the history of Joburg, that's the selling point. And also the people, very, very friendly people that we actually have. It's just incredible. What happens is that when I'm riding with the tourists, with my clients, we always, you know, waving each other. And one question that actually comes up is that, do you know everyone around here? Does everybody actually know you? I say, no, I don't know them, but you know, we just like that. That's Joburg. We are so friendly, and we are pushing, we are hustlers, we're getting things, you know, our way. So I think the history part of Joburg and the people of Joburg, I think that would be actually the best selling of Joburg. That's all what we have. That's all what we have, I think, in my opinion.
Okay.
And right. Oh yes, yeah. And the other thing is that you can ride in Joburg. You can cycle in Joburg. So let's get cycling happening in this city.
Great. I think that's something that it almost was left behind. At some point, we had a mayor who thought that was important. And over time, those cycling lanes have sort of been overtaken. And I'm looking at, I saw that in Paris, what they've done with the reopening is that they've actually created so much more space for cycle lanes. They've also taken over all the city pavements and even gone in. I mean, all the commuters are all complaining because you can't actually drive the roads anymore, because they've allowed restaurants to actually put their tables in the roads. But it's interesting of how cities should start to rethink how do we live usually and what should we change from this experience. Gerald, I'm coming back to you as if you are Minister of Tourism for a brief few minutes, what would you do?
My God, you're putting me on the spot now because all these people have said intelligent things already. Let me first say that, you know, in the bigger scheme of the world, I think we're all somehow disappointed in politics and politicians, you know, through what we've been through just now in the COVID experience. So I first would want to say, I think the world will be better off if we have more women leaders, like in New Zealand.
Okay, you get our vote.
If we had to choose a Minister of Tourism from this group, then it would have to be either Joe or Laurice or Louise. So we will shout from the back lines. But if you ask me what would I do, you know what, the fact is, in spite of everything that we complain about, and in spite of how disappointed we can be about the condition of the city some days and we struggle with, international travelers are coming here in their thousands. So I don't think it's a case of we have to advertise so much to get them here. I do think we have to address two things, though, and that relates to the perception that people have about the city that Joe also mentioned earlier, that people are afraid or wary of Johannesburg. I don't think that is something we can do for marketing. There are crucial things that must be done. Number one, we don't need any tourism authorities. Can we just have a municipality to focus on the basics? Can we have the streets clean? Can we have the holes on the sidewalks filled? And can we have the lights on at night so that people are comfortable to be in the city, so that they don't arrive here and what they see reinforces their perception? Because the honest truth is, normally once they come on tour, they actually discover they love Joburg, they discover the friendly people that Kennedy mentions, they discover the diversity that Charlie mentions, and they love the city. It's just, you know, there are the things that make people feel uncomfortable, and that we need to improve, because then they will actually be more confident to explore the city. So number one is the basic things of the, you know, infrastructure of the city needs to be better managed. And number two, if we are going to market something, can we embark on a mass propaganda scheme in which we will all participate, which will only be focused on the people of Johannesburg, because our biggest enemy is negativity of people living in Johannesburg. Ironically, we also in a unique sense that we get a lot of local tourists that other people don't. So it actually plays into our advantage that people are scared of town, therefore they book a tourist guide. In the bigger scheme of things. But if we can just get locals to be more confident about the city, because it's who tell foreigners to be afraid of the city. If we're going to get the locals to be confident about the city, then the foreigners will come and actually, you know, support a city from it.
That is a critical part of things. I think Joburg is one of the few cities in the world where people who live here think so badly of the place. And I do find it quite interesting that wherever I've traveled in the world, I've actually traveled to much worse cities, to be honest, much shittier cities. And I've never heard someone say, look, I come from this really shitty city. It's horrible. I've never heard that. People are generally proud of where they come from. So I think injecting that Joburg pride is such an important part of what we all try and do every day of our lives. I'm just going to switch back because there was a question here about taking live videos in the city. And is it safe taking that approach? Does Charlie or Kennedy take live videos when they go on their tours?
Kennedy, yes. You want to take that one first?
Yeah. It was safe for me. I think what I tell people most of the times is that the energy that you have around you is the energy which attracts what will be around you. So you are defeated already if you're scared there and then. So for me, I just do things. I just do it, and it's But I have to actually to look around and see who's around. But otherwise, it has actually been very safe for me. And because that's also just the perception that people actually have, thinking that being in Jersey, being in downtown, of course it depends which side of town you are at, right? We can talk about that, but in Marshall Town there, you'll be great. It'll be okay.
Charlie, do you want to add anything?
Okay, what I do is I have made sure that I know the people in the streets, they know me very well. And so it actually somewhat protects me because they know who I am and what I'm about. And because people know me from the person that sells in the corner shop to the guy that parks cars in the streets. So I do have that advantage of, you know what, my people can take pictures and videos. I don't normally take them per se because I'll be busy telling stories. But for me, my tours have been very safe. I've never had like a really close call to an incident like that. I've had a few where, you know, the people warn me and they say, okay, there's these guys, just be careful. But yeah, it's that relationship that you have with the streets as a tour guide. So that's what I have personally, and it has worked for me very well. So yes, my people really take videos during my tours.
Laurice, can I add to that?
Yeah, sure.
I just want to add, for the sake of the audience who participate, and I think all 4 guides who are part of this panel today, take utmost precaution or care of making sure they and the guests are safe. And that is as simple as being responsible with your route and what you do. None of us take people to areas where we think they would be, you know, unsafe or in jeopardy. And there is a lot to do in Joburg inner city that is perfect fine, but you do need to actually know the city. You definitely can't just know the city, say, okay, I'm not going to start doing walking tours in this area and arrive and walk around. You know, you have to do the homework. But we know all 4 of us frequent the streets and the areas in which we are quite comfortably without, you know, having sleepless nights at all.
Great. We've sort of addressed a little bit of this question, but I'm going to go into it. It's, I'm pleased to see Eugene is here. Eugene Allman, filmmaker who's been making a film about Joburg and who is currently stuck in Australia and has been for many months. We hope he can soon get a flight back to Joburg. He said the South African government has said international travelers will be allowed to enter from February 2021, which actually the whole tourism industry is fighting that date and saying tourism will resume from September, but we're all waiting to see if the COVID Council is prepared to endorse that view. He said, I know anything can change, but assuming that happens, we can hope for a tourism boom to South Africa. In fact, South Africa and the region are likely to be extra appealing to post-COVID-19 travelers who might be reluctant to travel to plague-infested USA and Europe. What could be done in terms of joining forces to encourage as many visitors to South Africa as possible, as well as to spend time in Johannesburg? So how would you get a greater message about this destination out? Because I think also our Joburg's fortunes for the next few months are certainly going to rest on the perception of South Africa as a destination. Any thoughts on that?
That's just such a big question. I mean, we're all
a whole other hour, but
here. I mean, it's not quite answering the question, but I do think it's a positive thing, is I've had very few cancellations. I've had all postponements of 1 year exactly. So I think that's quite a positive thing in that people who are, I'm talking about international tourists because I do a lot of work for travel agents. And all these big the agents that I work for, as I'm saying, they aren't canceling, they're just pushing back a year, all of them. So hopefully it's not going to be February 2021. But hopefully there is going to be a bit of a boom because all these people who've wanted to travel and have already paid for their big safari holidays are coming anyway, but they'll be coming a year later, hopefully.
Did you experience similar, Gerald and Charlie, of deferments rather than cancellations?
Yeah, I mean, Joe just made me actually realize something as she was speaking that I haven't thought about before. Maybe that's the answer for Eugene. I mean, this question is enormous and it's too difficult to answer, to be honest. But yes, I mean, we've also seen where we deal with groups. We often do tours for academic institutions from overseas and things like that, is that they all are coming, you know, they're just postponing, you know, keep on moving it around. But, you know, I haven't seen people now being afraid of traveling to South Africa. And I agree with Eugene, there are other places they're probably more afraid of. I think maybe our trick is to make sure that those who are already planning to come to South Africa spend more time in Johannesburg. I don't know how to do that, but I mean, maybe there is the opportunity to make sure, you know, they have a much more time to do the research before they come here now, you know. So if we can get the message to them that Joburg is this incredibly diverse, energetic, youthful, you know, migrant city of culture that you actually just have to feel. You can't fly this far and only see natural beauty. You have to see the culture and the art and the people of Johannesburg. If we could get the message to the people already planning to travel here, it could mean a lot. How we do it, I don't know. Maybe somebody else can tell us.
I think that was Eugene's other question of what form your mass propaganda campaign was going to take. But do you think we've done any work or enough work? I don't know. This is a real open question. I know we've got to work on Joburg locals to change their perception, but I also think that we haven't done much work as a city to tell people across the country why to come to Joburg. And I think we've kind of let that fester for too long, that people all over the country maybe are putting other people off about coming to Joburg, that if you're coming to a lodge in Mpumalanga or you're coming to a beautiful kind of guest house in Cape Town, those people are saying, and someone says, well, I'm coming through Joburg, should I stay there? People are hearing all the way along, people saying, no, don't, it's not worth it. So I'm wondering, like, how do we get that message out to the next province? Because I keep thinking those would be the people who need to be championing Joburg as much as their own destination. Any suggestions?
That is going to be a tough one, because if you're looking at Mpumalanga or Durban or Cape Town, they have those, Cape Town has got the mountains and the Tembo Mountain, and you've got Durban with their nice weather there, the beach and stuff. And then you have Mpumalanga, the Kruger National Park and all those nice areas to hike and stuff. So for Joburg, it will be very, very, very tough. I think we need to think so much deep on that. Say, how do we promote the history? Because that's all that we actually have. How do we promote the history? Where do we take them? Talk about the mining, because most people, they might come here to just go to Soweto, maybe, just hang out there and stuff. But yeah, Joburg, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. I don't know if maybe the other guys, the Geralds, the Charlie, have got something. But yeah, architecture, history, the people, that's it.
I mean, I also think shopping, they should come to shop, would be a big one. And maybe also the nightlife. I'm thinking it's got to be stuff that, why is someone from another province going to come here? And maybe it is like hip hop and graffiti and shopping, and it's like package it as this cool, young, like edgy city, which is, and I mean, there are people, it's not so much my focus, but there are there are companies, small companies in Joburg doing nightlife tours, and I think that's really cool. So, to me, that would be something maybe that could be packaged and at a really good rate sold to locals.
I absolutely agree with what you say, Joe. I mean, I just want to add that, the irony is, again, I hear what you say, it's difficult, but the irony is people travel around the world, they spend fortunes to visit New York or London or Paris. All three of those cities have infinitely more beautiful nature areas in those countries to visit, that are amazing. you know, yet people don't even think of traveling to the Grand Canyon or the Lake District or Champagne, you know. They do a holiday to the city and they experience the culture and the vibrancy and the city life that those places offer. So, you know, Joburg also actually offers an enormously creative, diverse cultural life, you know. The case is, how do we make it accessible to people? How do we make it enticing? I think it is wonderful once you've discovered what Joburg offers. And therefore people return many times once they've discovered the city. But how we get that message out, and especially the rest of South Africa as well, I don't know. I guess in places like the UK, London is a different country than the rest of the country, so they don't even care to market to the locals. They just have a big enough international following. But Joburg does have enough to offer. We don't have to stand back for the Blythe River Canyon or Table Mountain. We have something different. So it's not competing.
I see in the comments, people are saying we've also got mine dumps. It's like a tour around that, you know, those as attractions. Like the viewpoints from different mine dumps, although they're all slowly being undermined as we speak. And we also have golf. So, I mean, I do think, I mean, what you're saying is that there is so much. I travel for cities. I always have. It's like all my travel around the world has been to cities because I'm fascinated by what cities offer and that absolute mix. And I must say, Joburg is an absolute unique destination in that way. The kind of people who come together in this space is so unusual in so many places that I think that, you know, that in itself is something. It's interesting. I think we've almost been ashamed of the difference. And I think officially there hasn't really been an embracing of difference in the city. That the thing we should be most proud of, we actually hide, or we're scared to tell people, or we view people as criminals, or we think black travelers to the city are coming under offense. We don't know how to welcome people. So I think we've got quite a lot of work to do, but you guys are certainly holding the flag up for that. We've got 5 minutes left. I'm thinking I think maybe just do one more whip round for each panelist and to say, what is the one thing you would want people to know about Joburg? What for you is that like burning piece of information that people need to know?
Should I go first?
Your face.
You know, I lived in London for 2 years. I've traveled a lot. Johannesburg is not something I've settled on. It's the city that I was born in, but I choose to be in. And I think it is the most amazing city, full of the most amazing people, multicultural, multiracial. It's got an amazing history. It's got amazing architecture. It's got the most insane contemporary art and graffiti culture. And people should come and see it. You know, don't go to New York and go on a graffiti tour. Come to Joburg and go on a graffiti tour. And the same for the other tours. We've got so much going. And if you just go into the city, you feel so energized because people are so inspirational and have so much hustle. So people should, if they're feeling a bit down during COVID, come to the inner city and feel better about yourself.
Charlie.
What I want people to know and what I want people to take away from this is Joburg is and always has been a city of hope. When you're in Joburg, you get that sense of hope, you know, like this city can be better. This city will do better. You don't need to do much to get it there, you know. So that hope is what is keeping people of Joburg, you know, loving and smiling and diverse and so forth. So I think it is a city that has an opportunity and it's a hopeful city. So yeah, I think Joburg is a city of hope. So people should know that.
Kennedy? Thank you. Thanks, Charlie.
Okay. You know what? Joburg is inspirational. There's the story about it. I call it most of the times a collision of different tradition, human race, you know, from the word go. And from the time that the gold was found, it's just incredible to see that different people, when you read about the stories, different people from all different sides of the world. Do you know that the first Inspector General of Police was from Cyprus? So those are interesting things to see that Joburg has, just from its very nature, it is a city that it's people from different walks of life. Everybody, doesn't matter who it was, from the guy who was a digger, from the from the prospector, from the landlords. Everybody came together and made this city to what it is. And it actually resonates that even now, you know, that culture has, you know, has expanded even now. So yeah, so Joburg is so inspirational. The major city being here where it is no water sources and whatsoever, and yet we are who we are, the Golden City. And it's just incredible. It's just inspiring. So read about Joburg, understand it, and yeah, you love the city. It's lovely, and yeah, beautiful art too, and beautiful people.
Thank you. Gerald?
Yo, again, you make it so difficult. Shall I say, I agree with everyone. But yeah, for me, Joburg is a city of rebelliousness. It's a city of hustle. It's a city of anti-establishment. And therefore, I agree with what everybody said. It's a city of people. And what makes Joburg such a wonderful place to live in and to travel through and to visit and to experience is this incredible diversity of people. It is the city of migrants. It is a city that makes things happen in spite of the supposed bureaucracy. In fact, none of us rely on bureaucracy. Everybody here just makes things happen. We survive, and it's a place, therefore, so full of energy that you actually have to experience it. I mean, you can then bring it down to a level of saying the diversity, just in, Joe mentioned contemporary art and street art. Another one that we can mention is cuisine. I mean, there is no other city on the entire planet in which you can eat cuisine from 50 African countries, and then add from all over the world, because the migrant cultures here from the gold rush and even before. So I'm always surprised at people who travel to the winelands of the Cape, as beautiful it is, to go and sit in fancy restaurants where you eat on the same white tablecloth, the same finished food that you can eat anywhere in the world. Whereas Johannesburg actually offers some of the most incredible diversity in cuisine and art and music and theater and anything you can dream of. And in people just hustling, there is no better place to experience. I agree, it's a city of hope, it's a city of people, it's a city of diversity. And yes, it's a place to experience.
Okay, so what I like about all of this is that we asked what is a tour guide without tourists, and I have to say the answer is unbeaten. That I think you've all got the same incredible energy that you had a few months ago. I know it's been a really rough time, but I hope we will all see each other through this, and looking forward to the next kind of chapter of what Joburg will be. And thank you everybody for attending. We didn't get to all of the questions, but we hope to even maybe pick those up in a future session. And yeah, thanks everyone. Thank you, Gerald. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Charlie. Thanks, Kennedy. Thank you, Louise.
Thank you.
Thank you for organizing.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yes, bye.
Cheers.